Push on the beat.
Right, 1 August 2025, and today I want to take you through one of the most painful events in the history of Zimbabwe, and I want to take you from a security perspective. Who was responsible for deploying the army, and who was responsible for the death of 7 people in the CBD of Harare, who ordered the shooting, who ordered the deployment, who was in command, and what was the role of Chiwenga. So Chiwenga is a key player in the 1st August shootings. So let me show you what has happened and how Mnangagwa trapped Chiwenga. So Chiwenga was trapped by Mnangagwa, and Mnangagwa did in such a way that at the end of the day, every blame fell on Chiwenga. So the woman I'm displaying here is Sylvia Maposa. She was one of the women who was found dead at the back of the police station. And according to the army, the Zimbabwe National Army, that is Valerius Manda, the soldiers were not responsible for the deaths that happened in Harare on the 1st of August 2018. The election was held on the 30th of July. And on the 1st of August, the results were not out. So the results did not come out. And sorry, that is 31st of July. And people became impatient. Over 4,000 people were inside the CBD chanting that the results must be released. People started to walk towards the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, and most of these were young people. They were chanting and they were just standing around. Whole city of Harare was at a standstill. And this was barely a year after the coup. So the army was very strong. And what then happened is that around 1 p.m., Matanga, the police chief, called Obet Mpofu, the Minister of Home Affairs, and told him that the situation was out of control. Himself, Matanga, had been called by Albert Ngube. So if you go and look at Gambakwe right now, you can follow what I'm saying here in actual detail. So you'll be able to see the names of the people that I'm talking about here. So Albert Ngube was the officer commanding Harare province. And he called Matanga and told Matanga that the situation was out of control. After he called Matanga, Matanga called Obet Mpofu. Obet Mpofu called Chiwenga. Chiwenga then called back Obet Mpofu and told him that permission had been granted to deploy the army. And Obet Mpofu then called Valerius Banda. So Valerius Banda was called by Obet Mpofu and Chiwenga. So both of them called Obet Mpofu. Obet Mpofu then advised Matanga that permission had been granted. However, on his own side, Valerius Banda called Chimonyo. Chimonyo He called him and told him that permission had been granted. And all these people that I'm talking about came on the witness stand, except for the late Chimonyo. So the one who's passed away is Chimonyo. He's passed away. He was the commander of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces after taking over from Philip Valerius Banda, who was the CDF. So the commander of the defense of the Zimbabwe National Army was Chimonyo. Chimonyo then ordered Anselm Sanyatwe to take his units into Harare, and the command on the ground was with Sanyatwe. However, the gap then fell on Chiwenga. When everything was happening, there is a letter. So there is a letter from Matanga going to Obed Mpofu. There's a letter going from Obed Mpofu to Chiwenga. However, there's a letter from Chiwenga going to Mnangagwa. So this chain has got a letter that says, can we deploy? Can we deploy? And then Obed Mpofu asks Chiwenga, who was the Minister of Defense, can you please deploy? And then Chiwenga writes a letter to Mnangagwa and says, we need to deploy. However, Mnangagwa does not respond. So there's no letter from Mnangagwa to Chiwenga to say you must deploy. So that is where the gap is. So as far as the deployment is concerned, on paper, the person who deployed is Chiwenga. So that is why you see that there is a gap at the Mohlande Commission. There was a big problem to say who deployed the army, who allowed the soldiers into the Harare CBD. And the conclusion was that the deployment was done by Chiwenga. However, it was authorized by Mnangagwa. So in terms of law, in terms of, let's say you go to The Hague or whatever place, or wherever, International Criminal Court, the person that actually deployed on paper is Chiwenga. However, there is certain information that is available that was given to the commission. And that information shows that Chiwenga did get a verbal permission from Mnangagwa to deploy. And at the moment, Mnangagwa is refusing to release the report of the Mohlande Commission because that report will show that it was actually Mnangagwa who deployed the army into the Harare CBD. Now that we've covered that, we are clear who deployed. Technically, the person who deployed was Chiwenga. But in terms of what actually happened, the person who deployed is Mnangagwa. However, Mnangagwa knew what was going to happen and therefore made it look like Chiwenga is the one who deployed, because the order to shoot did not come from real soldiers. So I now want to take you through to who ordered the shooting. So who really caused the shooting and who killed the people. So if you go to Valerius Banda's testimony, you will see that he says, if you shoot an AK-47 into a group of people, not 3 people will die. So that is a semi-automatic weapon. It shoots a lot of rounds per second, maybe 100, I don't know how many per second. Those who know weapons, they'll be able to tell us. So if it was shot straight at the people, then a lot of people were going to die. So the theory by Valerius Banda during his testimony is that other people, shop owners, might have had weapons and they would have shot the people. Secondly, some other people who are part of the security structure could have shot these people and just disappeared into the crowd. But the soldiers themselves were not given an order to shoot. So remember, there are many players. There is FAS, there's intelligence, there's ZANU-PF people who are armed. And like Valerius Banda said, they are shop owners who are armed. So any of these people could have shot into the people. And if you look at the number of people who died and where they died they did not die in one spot. So some people died at the outskirts of town. So that is 3 people in the avenues. Sorry, 2 people, yes, 3 people in the avenues and 1 person behind the police station. That is Sylvia Maposa. She was found dead at the back of the police station with no one around. So 4 bodies were found with no one around. No one knows who killed them. So that day, there were 4 bodies around Harare, and there was another body. During the testimony of Sanyatwe, you realize that there was someone who was killed and his body was taken away, and no one knows what happened to that body. So that is the deaths that happened around Harare. 3 were at the spot where the soldier was shooting, and 4 were dispersed around the CBD. Someone took the cartridges. So the spent cartridges from the shooting were never found. And then they took a bunch of cartridges to the Mohlande Commission. It's not clear what were those cartridges. Were they AK-47? Were they other weapons? It's not clear because the report has never been released. So the full report of the Mohlande Commission has never been released. So now I want to recap. I don't want to keep this long. Let's keep it very short. Who deployed the army? So, according to the chain of command, Albert Ngube asked Matanga. Matanga asked Obet Mpov. Obet Mpov asked Chiwenga. This was done through a letter. So, this started at 10 a.m. and by 1, the army was deployed. When the army got on the ground, they found a dead body inside town, according to Sanyatwe. There was already 1 dead body which had been taken away, and there was blood where the body was. So let's say 1 person was dead by the time the army came. And then, during that time, when that was happening, Chiwenga then wrote back. Sorry, Chiwenga did not write back. Obenpov wrote back to Matanga. So there's a letter from Matanga, so from Obenpov to Matanga, Matanga to Ngube, authorizing the deployment. So the gap is at Chiwenga. So everything that Chiwenga did that day with Mnangagwa, there's no letter. So there's no letter that shows what order Mnangagwa gave, and there's no letter to Valerius Banda from Chiwenga. So there are 2 gaps. The letter from Mnangagwa authorizing Chiwenga, and the letter from Chiwenga authorizing Valerius Banda. Those letters don't exist, and therefore, in the scheme of things, the way they set it up is such that it looks like Chiwenga is the one who deployed the army on that particular day. 7 people died, and among those who were injured are 35 who are so badly injured, some of them still nursing injuries up to this very day. All right, so I want to bring this to an end. It's a sad day in our country. None of the recommendations of the Mohlande Commission have been implemented. Mnangagwa has not engaged, has not compensated the victims. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission has been captured. They have kept quiet about what was supposed to happen. There was supposed to be compensation, training of the army, accountability, finding the 45-degree guy. All those things have not been done. And in fact, people have left the positions. There is absolutely only 1 person who is left in position, and that is Valerius Banda. Chimonyo has passed away, Matanga has been fired, and Ngube is no longer the officer commanding Harare. Chiwenga is no longer the Minister of Defense, and Obet Mpov is no longer the Minister of Home Affairs. So nothing has happened, and these people's families are still waiting for answers. These are the people who died on the 1st of August, 2018, after the election which Chamisa said had won. The votes were so close, and Chamisa had the biggest support ever. That was soon after the death of Morgan Tsvangirai. Nelson Chamisa was one of the most popular people that you can ever see. So these people that I'm showing you are the 4 people that we have pictures of. So remember, we've got 7 deaths. two people, we don't have their pictures because one body was taken away before the time. And one of the most painful periods then followed from the 1st of August to the 7th of August. There was an orgy of violence inside of Harare. People were beaten so badly. The army went on a rampage. More people died in the suburbs of Harare. And eventually, on the 28th, Mnangagwa appointed the Motlanthe Commission. 28th of August, Mnangagwa appointed the Motlanthe Commission. Many people were jailed. People spent 6 to 7 months in jail without trial, including guys in South Africa here that I knew were just locked up and they did not come back. Their families don't know where they were for months and months. And that is the worst part of our history, a massacre that took place at the middle or center of Harare. So that was the only massacre that we've ever seen taking place. And that is what ushered Mnangagwa into power, into Zimbabwe as president. So that was his first real election after the coup. Okay, so I think I've covered everything. It's clear now what has happened. On paper, Chiwenga deployed, but in reality, the deployment was by Mnangagwa. Mnangagwa then wrote letters after the event. Mnangagwa wrote letters to prove that it was Chiwenga who did the deployment. So the way they did it is that every action that Chiwenga took, the authorization from Mnangagwa is not there. And the authorization to Valerio is not there. So it leaves Chiwenga as the guy who did the deployment. And the Motlanthe Commission, especially Maduku, he spent a lot of time on this point, asking Valerio Spanda who deployed. And Valerio Spanda would always point back to the Minister of Defense. He would say, I was authorized. And Chiwenga has never had an opportunity. I've not seen Chiwenga at the Motlanthe Commission, and I also didn't see Chimonyo at the Motlanthe Commission. So I think we'll wrap it up here. And I think Gabago Media has done a lot to cover this story. You guys now understand from the military side what happened, who caused what has happened, who in the army acted in what way, and what did they say. What we're going to do is next year, we're going to go on the other side. So the sound is so bad on these videos, and our videos are gone. So next year, we want to look at Tendai BT, and we also want to look at the security agent who was deployed inside the MDC by ZANU. So the part of MDC alliance was badly infiltrated by intelligence. So there was a man called Gabriel Chaiva. So Gabriel Chaiva was an agent of the CIO who was put into the MDC, into the security office of Morgan Tsvangirai. And he managed to infiltrate the office of Nelson Chamisa and become a top official in the office or security office of Nelson Chamisa. When the testimony time came, he flipped and went against Chamisa. So next year, we're going to give you those details. All right, let's quickly look at the comments. Both of them are murderers. Gilson Michelle Mombe. What do you say, Vano? Vano terera mchinda uyu. Dum. Yes, Gilson Michelle Mombe. Wakato terera urichi dum. There's a video, Gambakwe. Is there a soldier shot the civilians? No. Okay, let me explain to you, Musa Mtuma, what Valerio said, and I believe what he said. An AK-47, how many rounds does it produce a second? So let's Google AK-47, how many rounds per second? Right, so how many rounds does it release per second? So I'm just waiting for my answer. 600 rounds per minute. So if that guy was shooting and he was on his knees and he was going ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, that means 10 rounds per second. Okay, that's correct. 10 rounds per second. There's no way 3 people were going to die. That is what Valerio Spanda is saying. So what Valerius Panda is saying is that someone else, that guy could have been shooting, but there was someone else who also came on top of that soldier who was also shooting, but with a gun, a slower gun. So remember, you have to listen very carefully to the testimonies. And I don't believe that if you shoot an AK-47 at people, you will shoot out in a crowd of 4,000, you shoot 4 people. It's not possible. You shoot a lot more. However, because 35 people were injured, it's possible that those 35 were shot, but I didn't see a bunch of people lying on the ground. So we need to think very carefully about who else was shooting. And the theory that is being advanced is that someone else deployed inside that very time in the morning, and people were being shot even before the soldiers arrived. There was also shooting taking place. And because the other bodies were removed, you might find out that there were other people who were shot that we don't know. We have been shot because who removed that body and who is that body? When Sanyato was testifying, he said they found a puddle of blood and someone said a body had been removed. Who removed that body? Who shot the people in the avenues? Who shot the lady behind the police station and left a body there? Because not everyone was shot in the same spot. People were shot across town. Who was shooting people around town? Was someone driving around? Because she was walking. She was not, see, this lady was not running. She came from home. She came from work, locked up, and was going home. Someone drove and saw her walking and shot her dead without even any provocation or anything. So someone else was out there doing stuff. Who is that person? How many other people have been killed? And remember, post this period, someone drove around Chitungwiza shooting people that were standing around the houses. So about 8 people were shot dead while standing at home. Like someone is standing at the gate, you will look outside, you find someone has been shot dead, but you don't know who shot them. Who is this person? Is this the beginning of fires? So is that how fire started? Who is the person who did the shooting? And who took away the cartridges? What was in the cartridges? So only these questions can only be answered if Mnangagwa was to release the full report of the Motlanthe Commission and implement the recommendations which are in there. So I would like to bring this to an end. And guys, I was there that time. So I was sitting right in this chair doing what I'm doing in 2018 when the election was taking place. We were supporting Chamisa a lot. And that time I said, if Chamisa loses, I was going to wear a dress. I remember that day. If Chamisa loses, I'm going to wear a dress and walk into the Harare CBD. Unfortunately, it did happen. And Chamisa lost, but I never got to wear it. So I'd like to thank all of you for watching. It's a sad chapter. Remember the people who have passed away. And this is because of our politics. Nothing has changed in our country. Ever since Mugabe left, we are worse off under Mnangagwa. Mnangagwa arikuraya vanhu nenzara. Mnangagwa akabroka. Auxilia akabroka. Sean akabroka. Emerson Jr. akabroka. Kuda akabroka. Collins akabroka. Avese vakabroka. Ngavapiwe Chematsenga Nzungu vaende kubikita kunotamba muchongoyo. That is where they belong, these people. Okay. I think, guys, I've covered everything. Today we're not doing Mahere. Let's see what Mahere said today. I like Mahere very much. She's one of my people. She is amazing. You cannot say anything to make me not like Mahere this time around. Let's see what she's saying today. I saw someone saying Mahere. What did she say? Okay, same thing. She hasn't said anything. Let's see what Mavetera said. Mavetera akugeza. Ever since I know Japan, akugeza. Siya Fojga, Mavetera. Siya Fojga. There's nothing here about Mavetera. Vaskana wanosuta. Ukamupa kiss. Unosara Anoshuta mavetera ndona songe ane malips akatsva anoshuta, but anyway it's her own fault kana achishuta. So let's bring this to an end. So Mkoma Manyeba, she never wished a happy birthday. Manyeba, Mkoma Manyeba. So anyway, before I go, please support our sponsor. And I'm not going to display the product, but what I want you guys to know is that we got a special. If you buy a packet of Vein in Johannesburg, you get 2 detox from Zambia. If ka injury kako kajara kufamba 1 kilometer, that day kanofamba 3 kilometers. That is Zambia detox. Yakapenga. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. You can WhatsApp me here for any updates. Tomorrow, I promise, we're going to do the MPs. Most of you guys have been calling me about being MPs. So let's do it tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching and a good night.